Okay, I don't know if this is true for everyone, but for me, when the world starts feeling heavy and scary and loud, I kind of go into survival mode, and the first thing that goes is my creativity. It's pretty easy for me to start getting into lists and practicalities and contingency plans and lose that sense of wonder or joy or creative exploration in the process. What always helps is having some tangible things to come back to get my brain right and kind of get back on track creatively. So today, I'm sharing 5 books that have genuinely helped me stay creative and keep making things, even when things feel really hard or even hopeless. Let's dive in. If we're just meeting, I'm Janelle. I've been a freelance graphic designer for about 15 years, and this is my little corner to talk about design and freelance life and how to stay creative without losing your soul. And sometimes I just like to nerd out about my favorite things, which are books. I've been collecting pretty much every book I can find on creativity for years now, and there are a few that I find myself going back to over and over again when I need to kind of realign my brain. Lately, I've been feeling pretty depressed about the state of the world, and I've been finding myself coming back to a few books and pulling out bits of them and reading them almost like devotionals when I need to just kind of get myself reminded of what I'm trying to do and how to stay focused. These aren't like tutorial design books, that's another series. These are more about the process of creativity itself, how to stay creative and inspired when there's a lot of stuff going on. So if you are also struggling with feeling creative and inspired, or just need some encouragement that making stuff still matters, then these might help. Okay, so the first one is this tiny little book called Your Art Will Save Your Life by Beth Pickens. Beth is an art therapist and a creative coach, and she's worked with hundreds and probably thousands of artists for decades, walking them through their creative practice and helping them when they get stuck. This is actually her second book. She wrote it in 2018. Her first book, Make Your Art No Matter What, is another one I reference all of the time and have recommended in other videos. It's back there somewhere. But I love this one because she basically wrote it like a coaching session she would have with a client. It's broken up into these little sections that are basically what she would be telling you if you were sitting on her couch. It's really easy to digest, it's extremely practical, and it's also very current. She's talking about what's happening right now, the state of the world, things that are problems and concerns for a lot of artists, and she's addressing them really specific. It's not timeless, it's very timely, and it's really comforting for anyone who's kind of wrestling with the state of the planet and how to create art in heavy politics and all of that kind of stuff. It just feels like you're having a conversation with a really wise mentor. It's super short. I sat down and read it in one afternoon, and I walked away feeling way better. Now I come back and just read little bits when I need to kind of remind myself of something. Also, as a little bonus recommendation, this is not a book, so it's kind of cheating, but she also has a thing called the artist deck that she made too. I think it's pretty genius, and they kind of go together. It's this really beautiful deck of cards. They're really well made. They're visually really pretty. And each one has kind of a problem or a challenge that artists face a lot. And then she has kind of a little meditation or instruction about how to wrestle with that thing. So you can kind of like treat it like a little meditation as you're flipping through and thinking about different problems that you have, or you can go and get like specific help in a specific area. I really like this. I like to keep it on my desk, and sometimes in off moments, I'll just kind of flip through it and get a little jolt of inspiration. So you might want to look at that if you are also kind of a tactile person. Okay, I'm definitely not the first person on the internet to recommend this next book, but I would be very remiss if it didn't come up in this category. So this is Keep Going by Kleon. I am a fangirl of Mr. Kleon's. I follow everything he does. I'm pretty obsessed with the way his mind works. And specifically, he has this wonderful trilogy of creative books. The others are behind me. You've probably heard of Stay Like an Artist, and this is the third in that kind of creative life trilogy. The literal subtitle is 10 Ways to Stay Creative in Good Times and Bad, which kind of sums up the general vibe we've got going on right now. What I love about the way that he writes his books is extremely visual. It's really easy to quickly read through to get the heart of what he's talking about in this really visual, visceral kind of a way. But his brain is really poetic and thoughtful, and he just gives you these little nuggets that are really useful. And it's the kind of thoughts that really stay with you. Instead of reading this giant tome, these little bits kind of easily stay in your brain. And it's something that I feel like I find myself going back to over and over again. I really can't exaggerate how much this little book has helped me when I'm feeling really discouraged, both about the general state of the world, but also just my own creative practice when things feel slow or I'm not seeing the results that I want to, and I kind of lose what the point of all of this even is, this is the answer. Okay, the next one is actually one that just came out. I got it on pre-order right when he released it, and I devoured it really quickly as soon as it got delivered to me. It's called Doom and Bloom, which is very inspiring to me right now, and it's by a Canadian artist named Campbell, who you probably have heard of as Stressless on YouTube. I love his channel, like most people. It's wonderful. I think he's great. And as soon as he started talking about this book, I knew I had to order it. One thing I really love about him as a creator is he's been really open and vocal about his own process with mental health and neurodivergency and how he's tried to work his way towards a creative practice that is honoring of those things, but also life-giving for him. And this is kind of the summary of that. He has some really useful approaches for how he's tackled his own creative projects, how he's found things that work with his own brain, and kind of what he does when he finds himself in a deep kind of creative slump and depression. It's also, unsurprisingly, illustrated beautifully. I love the way it's laid out, and I found it really easy to sink my brain into and kind of tear through. He really goes back to the idea that your creative practice is the most life-giving thing in your life. And it's so helpful to be able to keep being reminded of exactly how true that is. So I love this book. Okay, this next one is probably also not new to you if you've been on the creative corner of the internet in the last year or so. But Rick Rubin's book, The Creative Act, has been deeply healing and beautiful to me, and I've loved going through it. It's another one that really reads like meditations and these tiny little thoughts and little snippets. And instead of reading it like a book, I put it next to my journal and where I sit and have my cup of coffee in the morning. And I scroll through and read one little bit, kind of out of order, as I'm having my first cup of coffee and doing the Wordle. I found it really grounding and like a very centering way to start my day. I just love his mind. He's incredibly articulate about the creative process, and it's just really poetic and thoughtful, and it puts me in this really beautiful place. It's not all super abstract either. He has some kind of like lists and grounding principles, like this one on habits that aren't conducive to work, that was deeply convicting to me and gave me some real aha moments that I have continued to walk out. So I highly recommend this, especially if you want something to kind of keep coming back to and weave into your creative practice. This last one's a little bit of a different format. While these are thoughts and meditations on the creative process, this is a collection of interviews and case studies. The author, Adam Moss, got kind of obsessed with the question, how does a creative thing actually develop from nothing to something? So he made a list of 40-some artists and authors and filmmakers and architects and creative makers that he personally loved and respected. And then he got them to do interviews, and he did case studies of how they made a seminal thing that they did. He shows raw notes and scrapped concepts and walks through the actual process from very first rough draft to finished thing and tries to get to the heart of how does that creative thing come out in sort of messy starts and stops, regardless of what the actual medium of the thing is. I think this kind of book is deeply helpful for any creative because it's really easy, especially in the age of social media, to see so many finished products. We're constantly getting our eyes bombarded with beautiful, interesting, creative work at its finished form. And even if we start following our favorite makers and creators, it's easy to feel like they are sort of fully formed genius people that have these perfect ideas vomiting out of them all of the time. Meanwhile, you're sitting here with this blank piece of paper scribbled all over the place and never able to fully coalesce it. And that giant gulf between you in the muck, eking your way out to some sort of creative end, and all of this beautiful finished creative work can feel completely depressing. You can read this front to back like a book, or you can do what I do, which is to flip over in the index and pick a creator that you personally really love and respect, and then read their actual process. I'm a theater nerd, Broadway junkie, and like most of my ilk, I worship at the throne of Stephen Sondheim. I have this really visceral memory when I was 19 of the first time I ever heard a Sondheim song. I had a professor at art school that would spend the hour before his class started playing clips of things that he found inspiring. So if you wanted to come to class early, you could hang out with him while he just showed you things that he liked. It was kind of amazing. And one day he put on the documentary of the making of the cast album for the musical company. I walked in at the part where they were recording the song Getting Married Today, which, if you know anything about Sondheim, is one of his most famous and technically amazing songs. And I walked in and was just flooded with this cacophony of sound. And I was like, I don't know what this is, but I know that I love it. I got kind of obsessed and found everything I possibly could on Sondheim, and quickly came to the understanding This man was a genius, and there are genius people over here, and the rest of us just sort of eking out creativity, right? What I love about this book is that he interviewed Sondheim and actually broke down that song, Getting Married Today. He shows his scribbled notes and his concepting, but he also shows his first attempt, which was a completely different song that got scrapped when they were heading to previews. Turns out he pulled an all-nighter the night before they had to go on the road and frantically wrote an entirely new version, the song I was obsessed with when I was 19. It wasn't some sort of perfect, crafted masterpiece. He had to fight for it. He had to struggle and eke his way through, just like anyone did. Now, I still think he's a genius, but it is incredibly compelling and helpful to actually be able to see the process that this thing that I've always loved went through to get to its final result. And that's why I love books like this. So if you ever find yourself feeling like there's all these genius people and you, pull this book out. It really helps. I really hope some of these resonated with you. And please know that if you are feeling stuck or disconnected from your creativity right now, you are not alone, and we can get through this together. One practice that has really helped me as I've been feeling really blocked this year has been going through The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. I did a video at the beginning of the year walking through the process and the challenge and what I was going to do, and then a follow-up as I actually went through it and kind of what I got out of it. So if you want to go check those out, you can follow along with me. I'll see you there.